Hello everyone, I'm Haiyan from the Visualization and Multimedia Lab in the University of Zurich. Today I'm going to present our work SenVis, an interactive visualization tool for sensitivity analysis based on tensor methods. For a given mathematical or simulation model, sensitivity analysis studies how the model's output uncertainty can be allocated to the uncertainties from its input variables, which can be very useful for model understanding, refining, and simplification. For example, this is an Ebola spread model, which models the reproduction number as a function of multiple variables. And the experts would like to know which variables influence the output the most, in order to intervene the process of the virus infection, and thus in the end decrease the reproduction number. For example, variable gamma1 and psi both appear in the numerator and denominator of this function, thus very unintuitive to tell how much influence each of them contributes to R0. So the question is how to numerically quantify the significance of each variable, moreover, the significance of combinations of variables. Good thing is, this problem is well studied in terms of global sensitivity analysis. And variance-based sensitivity analysis proposed by Sobol is one of the most widely used methods. It decomposes a squared integrable multidimensional function f into a sum of subfunctions. Each subfunction f alpha only depends on a different subset of the n input variables contained in alpha. Given the total variance of the function as d, we can split it up into a partition of variances v alpha. Then normalizing v alpha by the total variance d, we get sensitivity indices, or Sobol indices, as alpha. Notice that for a function with n input variables, there are 2 to the power of n possible subsets of n variables. Thus, the Sobol decomposition contains 2 to the power of n items. To efficiently manipulate the large set of the Sobol indices, we organize all the Sobol indices into a Sobol tensor, which is a hypercube of size 2 to the power of n. In this format, querying any Sobol indices is equivalent to manipulating hypercube slices. However, when n becomes large, storing this exponential size dataset can be computationally costly. To avoid the curse of dimensionality, a tensor decomposition method was proposed by modeling the function as a tensor train surrogate. Tensor decompositions are higher-order generalization of matrix singular value decomposition, which can represent high-dimensional data in a compact form, among which tensor train model is of particular interest because of its linearity of dimensionality. Sobol tensor model uses a sequence of n tensor calls Tn to represent n-dimensional data, except for the first and last tensors T1 and Tn, which consist of 2 row or column vectors. All other tensor calls Tn consist of 2 slices of matrices. The first slice represents the absence of the variable, and the second slice represents the presence of the variable. In this example, if we take the second slices of the second and last tensor call, and the first slices of all other tensor calls, it will result in the Sobol index of variable tuple 2, 7. And all the other Sobol indices can be easily computed in a similar way. Moreover, based on the Sobol tensor tree model, We are also able to compute aggregated indices with very little cost, which result in 4 types of sensitivity indices, as illustrated as color-coded areas for variable tuple 1, 2 in case of a 4-variable function. Different types of indices give us more information about the sensitivity of the whole input variable space. For example, total indices tell us the sensitivity of not only the variable tuple itself, but also all the interactions with other variables. Thus, is often used as the indicator for unimportant variables. Closed index 1, 2 tells the influence from only 1 and 2. If looking at the closed index together with the superindex, we can be clearly informed if 1 and 2 have a very strong or little interaction effect. And the superset indices is very useful when computing the relative importance. Relative importance is our newly introduced quantity, which basically tells us what fraction of the overall effect of beta is actually due to its interactions with variables in alpha, and allow us to break down joint effects into their building blocks. This helps us to distinguish case where beta itself is very important from case that beta is important because its interaction with alpha makes it important. However, being able to compute and store all the superindices does not help us much to understand these indices. When n is small, for example 4, we can still visualize all the superindices in the traditional way, like a Venn diagram. However, this quickly becomes inadequate when n grows. Thus, we developed an interactive visualization tool, SenVis, to help understand and explore the sensitivity indices, which in real applications can be very useful for model understanding and simplification. First of all, a direct display of all the sensitivity indices values is a good guidance for further exploration. And this is achieved by tabular view. 4 types of superindices are displayed in the sortable table, so the user can quickly find out the larger superindices, which in most cases correspond to the more influential variables. The table is organized based on the number of variables, so users can access higher order indices easily in an intuitive way. Notice that the variable column is color-coded in green or red based on the directional covariance, a newly derived quantity that helps to indicate if a variable's influence is positive or negative towards the output. For example, if our target is to increase the output, we can pay more attention on the green-colored variables. Considering the possible high dimensionality of a model and the relatively limited number of effective input variables, we add a variable selection option for interactive exploration. So after exploring and finding out the influential variables from the tabular view, user can further select those specific variables, and then the sensitivity indices of selected variables will be queried and visualized. The purpose of the designed visualization is twofold. First is to directly show the relations of 4 types of sensitivity indices as a generalization of the Venn diagram for large N. Second is to visualize the relative importance quantity to help users dive deeper into the interaction of the influences from different variables. To achieve this, we designed 2 visualization views for the visual analysis of sensitivity indices. Super view encodes the value of each sensitivity indices as bar chart or donut chart. The relations of superindices and the other three aggregated indices are encoded as weighted links. Moreover, the directional covariance is also encoded as color circles together with the label information on the right-hand side of the view, indicating either positive or negative influence of variables. Hovering on any superindices will highlight those other types of indices that are related with it, and the comparison is also supported by clicking on the interested indices. Interaction view, on the other hand, visualizes the relative importance at linked scatters using a novel hourglass design. All the selected variables are placed as bar charts on the top and bottom of the view, representing set alpha and set beta. Each circle in the middle area represents one relative importance relation between tuple alpha and beta. Users can hover on the circles, which will highlight the circle and its related alpha and beta bars. Users can also click on the circles for direct comparison. If clicking on the top or bottom bars, it will highlight all the relative importance circles that share the same set alpha or set beta. Lastly, by using the filter on top of the view, smaller circles will be filtered out, and the users can focus on the most important variable relations. SenVis also supports user-defined models from the model upload functionality in the navigation panel, so the user can upload their own model to analyze the sensitivity indices. Next, I will shortly demonstrate our SenVis system on the Ebola spread model. First, from the navigation bar, we can choose the predefined model. The supertensor will be built and the sensitivity indices will be calculated from the server side. Then all the first-order indices will be displayed in the tabular view by default. Higher-order indices can also be navigated. Normally, we can just select the variables with large superindices. Sometimes, like here for the Ebola spread model, we want to study those variables that human can intervene. Thus, we select those specific variables based on the prior knowledge. Then, the super view and interaction view will be generated. By inspecting the directional covariance in the super view, we see that variable 8 psi, tuple 7,8, omega psi, and 2,8 beta 2 psi have the largest decreasing effect on the output. Can we then directly go to apply this information on the model? Answer is no, because we are not sure if there are interaction effects with other variables. What if we increase psi but causes the increase of beta 1? This will eliminate our effort. Thus, we check the interaction view. What we know is beta 1, 2, 3 will increase output, while omega and psi will decrease output, which is what we want. Omega has little influence on other variables, which means if we enhance the effect from omega, those, especially beta 1, 2, 3, will not be affected to add opposite effect. Then, if we check which variables are influencing omega, we can see beta 2 and psi have stronger interaction with omega. Because psi can provide the same effect, we only need to pay attention on beta 2 because its change will heavily influence the effect of omega. In contrast, psi has a very strong interaction with other variables, especially beta 1 had the most interaction with psi. Similarly, we check all the other variables. Beta 3 has no interaction with other variables, thus easy to deal with. Beta 2 mainly affect omega, as we already know, and beta 1 can affect the influence of psi. Lastly, users can also easily upload their own model here and analyze the sensitivity indices. In this work, we developed an interactive sensitivity visualization tool which employs the powerful tensor train decomposition technique to achieve a fast and accurate computation and query of sensitivity indices. The approximation accuracy can be controlled by user-defined threshold, and this method is able to model the whole complexity of a model quantitatively. Please check out our open source project in GitHub, and thank you for your listening.